Scott McNair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Overruled podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vicnair Law Firm. I am David Vicnair, and I'm here with my co-host and law partner, Mr. Brad Scott. We are excited to have a couple of exciting topics to bring to you today on the show. And it's a hot summer day in New Orleans. And Brad, I think you're going to take our first hot topic on a hot summer day. What is your topic for the show today,
Well,
Brad?
that's not a preview of... My hot topic is the heat wave.
Like the most cliche thing I think I've ever said. The hot.
David, if you haven't been outside recently, it is ridiculously hot.
You don't say.
Yes. If you can kind of notice it when you get outside the office. I don't know why we wear these jackets, but...
Because we're idiots, that's
yes,
why.
But we have this heat wave that's moving through the U.S. right now. Even in Europe, they're experiencing these record high temperatures. It's crazy if you start looking at the temperatures that they're recording. I was looking at some things online. Phoenix, El Paso, Vegas, all these areas are setting new records for the most consecutive days for over triple-digit temperatures. Death Valley is set to hit temperatures around 130 degrees. Ugh. I think that's the temperature I bake my cinnamon rolls at in the morning. I actually saw a story online. Somebody put a loaf pan with bread in their mailbox and was able to actually cook bread in their mailbox. It's getting that damn hot outside.
You bake cinnamon rolls in the morning?
Absolutely.
Don't believe that for a second.
I have a 4-year-old. She loves sugar. She runs on sugar. But even getting into Europe, I just got back from a trip to Italy not that long ago, but like Rome and other tourist destinations in Italy, they're bumping up close to temperatures around 120 degrees right now. It's really impacting tourism. It's impacting people's vacations. It's also having a health impact. A lot of people are being hospitalized because of this heat.
Yeah.
They're citing the cause in the U.S. as this what's called a heat dome. It's a high pressure that's kind of sitting over the country, and it acts like a cover, and it's trapping the heat underneath it. The cause in Europe, which I found interesting, is something called an anticyclone, which I had never run into that weather term before, but it's basically a reverse hurricane. The air mass is moving in the opposite direction, and it's causing everything to dry out and all the hot air to come down. But either way, we have these phenomena that are going on right now, causing kind of record-breaking heat in the U.S. and Europe. Obviously, as soon as the thermostat goes up, all the global warming debate gets in the forefront again.
I just want to get back quickly, though, before we go into that vortex about, it's so hot. I don't know about you, but I have this period. I call it the no outside zone in my head.
Like from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
No, like June, July, and August. So I went to dinner with some friends a couple weekends ago. I'm thinking about this, and we ended up having to sit outside because it was all packed inside. I'm like, I will not do it. If there's a period of time in New Orleans where it's June, July, August, I will not sit outside, or I'm just going to go home.
But David, don't worry about that. Okay.
Okay.
Tell
me why I shouldn't
there is
worry
a
about
solution to that. You will soon be able to enjoy outdoor temperatures in Louisiana in the middle of the summer because our brilliant government has come up with a plan to save the planet. Have you heard about this?
No, but I'm excited to hear about it. Tell me more.
The Biden administration recently released a report that has opened the door for considering a plan to block the sunlight from reaching the Earth. It's called Solar Radiation Modification. Some of the tactics that they are discussing possibly utilizing is to increase the amount of aerosols released into the stratosphere that will reflect the sunlight away from the Earth. They're also talking about increasing cloud cover over the oceans, and they're also talking about reducing the amount of high-flying cirrus clouds, which reflect solar radiation back to Earth. What could possibly go wrong if we put the government in charge of our weather? These are the same people who have done an amazing job with our border security, with Social Security, with the national debt. These people are definitely the ones you want installing planetary curtains to block out the sunlight.
Well, the globe is definitely, I feel, not being a climatologist or a climate scientist, I feel like we are in a warming period of some sort without trying to get into that big debate. Obviously, I don't want to because I don't know enough to intelligently debate it, to be candid. But the summers have been hotter. I don't know that I trust the government to put a curtain over us and make it less hot, though.
What astounds me is these people think that it's our place to start asserting that kind of control over the planet. I mean, the Earth is 4 billion years old. We've been around for a mere 200,000 years. That's 0.007% of the Earth's history that we've been involved in. But all of a sudden, we're going to start doing this kind of stuff to affect weather patterns. I mean, I'm starting to think of the slippery slope that we're on here. If you start altering global weather patterns, how's it going to disrupt global food supplies? And think of all the unintentional chain reactions that can happen. I'd just say, be careful who you're putting in office and who's going to start doing these types of things. I think this is a really dangerous thing. I hate the heat as much as anyone else, but I don't think the solution is to start blocking out the sunlight.
Well, I think the solution is not to sit outside in June, July, and August unless there's a swimming pool nearby that you can retreat into, because otherwise I am currently melting, and I'm meeting a friend asked me to have a glass of wine or two after work today to run a couple things by me, and I'm going to be meeting them at a venue real close to this building that we work in here in downtown New Orleans, and there is an outdoor and indoor selection, and everyone in this office knows if we go to that place, we are going indoor in June, July, and August. Irrespective of whatever curtains the government intends to put over the sun, I will be inside until it is September and I can actually breathe like a normal human.
Well, hopefully this anti-cyclone and this heat dome can kind of move out of here. We can kind of start enjoying a little bit of the summer, getting back outside to do some of the fun things we like to do, like fishing and hunting and things like that, without completely scorching to death.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I've noticed it's happened more and more over the years since I've lived in New Orleans, that a big section of the city and people who live here, work here, mostly especially a lot of retired people, they leave during the summer. The conventions stop. The city is totally different in June, July, and August until about the end of August, when we really ramp up into football season and the fall weather comes back a bit, which has been coming back later recently.
It's unbearable. People don't want to be here during those time periods.
No doubt. Well, thanks for that topic, Brad.
What's yours? What do you have for us today?
Well, before I jump into it, do we have any? We're all live. Do we have any? Kyle, what do we got? We got anybody asking any questions? All right. So we got Georgie from Monroe. Hello, Georgie. Wants to know what your favorite summer destination is, Brad.
Yeah, somewhere cool.
We're going to sound like the biggest whiny babies. Anybody listening to us this morning?
I'd love to go back to Italy or Europe, but right now with the temperatures, you wouldn't want to travel right now. I think one of the places I'd like to visit during the summer, I really enjoy going to Washington, D.C. I think that's probably a good summertime venue because a lot of stuff you can do is inside. A lot of the museums and things of that nature, you can spend some time in the air condition, enjoying some history and things of that nature. I would encourage people. Those are good trips to take.
Yeah. And by the way, if you think we're being whiny about the heat, I am being whiny about the heat. Like, I'm a human. We're entitled to be a little bit whiny about some things. The heat makes me whiny. I would say my favorite summer vacation is Florida, even though it's just as hot. At least you can get in the water. I like going to the beach. I like getting in the water. It cools you off. Getting in the swimming pool. I love everything tropical drinks, tropical food. So for me, it's pretty simple. It's Florida. But anyways, my topic for today, getting off the heat, is a discussion about the perils and problems that home buyers are facing in the residential housing market. And what we kind of got going on, Brad, right now in the residential housing market is sort of the worst of all worlds. We have, one, people who are not selling their homes, and particularly people are reticent to sell because of the drastic increase that we've had in interest rates. We talked about that because of variable rates and interest rate increases. But one of the issues with the interest rate increase is that people who are currently in a home, I think about myself or other people,
they want to stay with that mortgage they
100%. They got low rates. They bought in great deals anywhere from, I know people who are getting high 2%. It's almost like completely free money, but people have in the 3s and in the 4s and in the low 5% on most of their mortgages. A lot of them are 30-year fixed, and people don't want to lose that rate, to lose that current mortgage that they have.
So we have a supply shortage because of that.
Well, that's one of the factors. Then you have the interest rate increase, obviously, which is fueling that. That fuels the competition for the existing inventory to be intense. Because if you got less inventory, people in existing homes who don't want to sell because they don't want to lose their rates, then you have less supply, yet more demand. And then the demand has been somewhat altered or affected by the fact that people are buying in and what they go get in an interest rate now compared to a year ago would be 3 or 4% higher because of the Fed's aggressive approach to taming inflation by increasing interest rates. So this topic was a really long, interesting article I read. It was published actually early this morning on Business Insider, and it's called "The Last Best Hope for Home Buyers," talking about this. And really, with the main thrust of the article is that if you're in the market and you're a current home buyer, your best hope right now is essentially new homes. Okay,
New construction.
New construction. Builders, believe it or not, are selling houses faster and feeling much more optimistic related to new houses, which is a good thing because there has for many years been a huge inventory shortage, and the residential housing market industry specialists have been arguing for years needed, for example, new homes were never going to bridge the gap. That was not going to be the supply coming, even if that ramped up significantly, was not going to be enough. They needed inventory from all sources. They needed it from existing homes, from new homes, different multifamily housing. And unfortunately, with the way the market has turned, there's almost not much supply at all coming from those other sources, and there's been more pressure put on builders and on new homes. However, this article noted how the May census data showed that new home construction in May increased 16% month over month. This shocked. The article was quick to point out and quoted a bunch of industry specialists, even some of the most plugged in and dedicated industry specialists. They were shocked to see how high that increase in new home building was in May, and 16%. 18.7% of that was single family and 11.5% was multifamily. Also, sales in newly built homes in May reached an annual pace of around $763,000. This represented a 12% increase from April and a 20% increase from the same time period a year ago. So essentially what the census data in this article is arriving at a conclusion, both from an inventory standpoint of new homes and new multifamily properties that are being built, as well as gauging that feeling from builders, like they're feeling optimistic. And once they start feeling optimistic and sales are increasing, that means they're going to start laying more foundations.
Yes. I wonder how much of this is kind of a backlog that kind of was put in place with COVID and labor shortages. For a while we had construction material prices that were skyrocketing and, shortage of labor, shortage of supplies. So I think there was a lot of drop in new constructions for a couple of years during that period. So I wonder if maybe we're kind of getting out of that phase now and we're starting to kind of catch that back up, and some of that initial pressure is kind of working its way through the system.
And that's actually one of the things that came up in this article, and reading some other articles about this, Brad, that came up. So the NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders, who kind of does these surveys and gauges how are builders feeling, what are they thinking, where is the market going. One of the things, besides the pressure on builders to produce much more inventory in new homes, that has really baked into their confidence as well, is that a lot of the supply chain disruptions that they've seen during COVID, the incredibly erratic pricing as it relates to materials, and when you say material, anything from like plywood and studs
to appliances.
Or appliances.
Yep,
crazy
across the board.
Crazy pricing, crazy backlogs, unavailable, just ridiculous time periods for even having a gauge and when they could get some of these things.
Couldn't get anything done.
100%. And ultimately, not being able to plan on when to get them and what price you get at affects your bid, the cost, as well as how long you're on the project, which affects their profitability. So a lot of that has tamed down. So a lot of those supply chain issues kind of calming down have led into builder confidence, according to the NAHB. I mean, I guess you go do an anecdotal poll of 10 different builders. They may say I'm crazy. Half may say I'm crazy. Half may agree. But the NAHB's spin on it is that has been one of the factors in building their confidence.
And like with anything with real estate, where you're at locally makes a big difference as well. You can have completely different markets for housing from, between here and Phoenix, based on just other criteria that's happening at the time.
I do think it is concerning, though, in this article, as a quote came from Black Knight, which is a huge provider of mortgage technology and data. And they essentially, one of the representatives of that company had mentioned how the existing home market, quote, is frozen, and anyone who wants to buy a new home is faced to basically go to the new home market to go get that supply. And so, the article does discuss that, the new home building is never going to be enough at any production level, nor do we have the capability to truly fill the housing shortfall that the country is currently facing. So it's pretty concerning given the high interest rates and the frozen nature of the reselling market, because that is a big peg of one of the legs on the table needed to get inventory really up in the market. But I will say another factor which I found interesting as like a market condition playing on builders versus like existing home sellers is that one thing builders are able to do that sellers are not really incentivized to do right now is builders have a little bit more control over the rates and on something called rate buy downs that they can offer buyers, meaning they are being more incentivized to offer rate buy downs to buyers as a sweetener to make a deal close and for them to buy a new home build, whereas sellers are not feeling the pressure to do that right now because they're sitting in a position, existing home sellers are in a position where they know that they're like the only show in town. There's not much inventory and there's more demand for existing homes than what is currently out there. So you're much more likely as a home buyer
Get a better deal.
to get a better deal through a new builder because they are more incentivized and more regularly. I forgot the percentage in the article. It was somewhere like it's up 20% that builders are offering rate buy downs to potential buyers.
It's amazing to see. I mean, really, the key factor here is interest rates. You know, until interest rates come back down, we're going to still see these problems. But think about that, how much interest rates affect people's behaviors as far as where they're going to live, when they're going to sell a home. It factors into a lot of parts of our world that we just kind of take it for granted sometimes. So it's kind of key to keep an eye on those things.
Yeah, so the theme of the article is that's a positive for the residential housing market. New home sales are up. Builder confidence is up. I expect at least the writers and a lot of the industry specialists quoted in there expect new home builds to be increasing and being a critical part of filling that gap for supply in the market. But like I mentioned at the end, the big asterisk is this isn't enough. There's a huge housing shortage in the country in the residential market, and the new home construction alone is just going to can't cover it. And it's just, no matter how high it ramps up, even if it increases at that same rate, 16% month over month, it's not going to be sufficient to bridge the enormous housing shortfall that we're currently looking at in the country, solely from new construction.
So that quick ramp up in interest rates really kind of put this thing in play, it looks like, because people don't want to get out of those existing mortgages.
Once again, we talked about this about the commercial market months ago. It's worse of both worlds. You had prices doubling, tripling after COVID, almost pushing so many properties and homes out of people's budgets and affordability. And then you dovetail on the back end of that with these doubling and triplings of the interest rate to tame inflation. And it's kind of just thrown both the commercial and residential housing market in somewhat crisis and in flux. And it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of settles down eventually. Inflation seems to have cooled off. But I am interested to see, where is that going to land as far as like actual rate reductions that will translate into existing homes being put back into inventory and bridging some of the housing shortfall.
Sounds like we got a long way to go.
It does. Well, thanks for that hot topic today, Brad. It was quite hot. It's an interesting discussion about how hot it is. I don't think we had to tell people that. They're like, duh, or it's melting over here. It's hot.
Okay. The curtains are coming.
And also an interesting discussion talking about the residential housing market. It's just going to be interesting to see where that lands with the Fed and interest rates and things of that nature.
Well, for those of y'all looking for new homes, though, it looks like getting a contractor on board is a place to go, right?
Keep your eye out for things being demolished and built, or find a contractor to build you something, because otherwise, unfortunately, you might be in a bad bidding war over an existing house that you may not want as much. But
hot market for houses and hot summer.
We'll leave it at that. This has been Overruled, brought to you by the Scott Vignair Law Firm. Once again, I am David Vignair with my co-host Brad Scott. We really appreciate y'all being with us today, listening to these interesting topics. We hope you're having a great summer with your family and friends. Looking forward to talking to you next time.
Stay cool.
Scott Vignair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.